I want to do a little bit of a commercial first to tell you a little bit about what's going on at the library these days, and then I'll introduce my guest to you. The results of our library survey are in. Thank you all to the 89 people who took the time to fill it out, and to those who stopped by to talk to us about your needs and interests. This project, in fact, was in response to survey interest in having a community read and a book discussion group. Over 75 people read this book from this tiny community. Thank you. It's been great speaking with you in book discussions at the main desk at the library or even on the street. We're working on a new book selection, so stay tuned. And please fill out the feedback form for this event. It's at the back of the room before you leave today. And tell us what you think. And tell us what you'd like to see for your next book read. The most request change on the survey was to return to providing museum passes, and I agree. So, with the help from the Friends of the Library and a generous donor, we now have passes for Gardner Museum, House of Seven Gables, Lynn Museum, Museum of Fine Art, Peabody Essex, Wenham, and a parking pass to the state parks. Still to come, Boston Museum of Science, hopefully by this summer. We are also looking at new hours. The survey respondents also commented on the hours that the library is open. Given our small staff, we can't be open every day, but we can make the hours a little more predictable. So beginning April 1st, we will open Tuesday through Friday at 10, and close at 7 on Tuesdays and Thursdays for commuters, so just a little bit later to accommodate them. On Saturdays, the library will be open from 12 to 4. Sundays, many of you expressed an interest in being open on Sunday, so here's what we'll do. We'll open one Sunday afternoon each month for a lecture from 4 to 5, and we'll open our doors an hour before, close an hour after, so total of 3 to 6. So if you want to use the library, check out a book before or after, you're welcome to do that. With help from a grant from Nahant Cultural Council, we're offering a lecture in April, May, and June this season to discuss issues pertaining to the presidential election. So we're kind of continuing the theme that we've started with this project. There is a flyer in the back on your way out. Please pick up a flyer about the Nahant Library Forum. In the April school vacation, there will be an all-ages program right here at Town Hall on Wednesday, April 20th at 10 o'clock, when Curious Creatures brings us some amazing animals to enjoy. A flyer for the week is for that whole week, so if you have school-age children, that's also at the back. And thank you to the Friends of the Library to make that program available to us. The Friends of the Library will also once again host their library book sale on Saturday, April 30th. That's the day of town meeting and the vote, from 10 to 2. We would welcome your book donations of nearly new or collectible fiction and nonfiction. Please stop by anytime the library is open to drop those off. We are furiously sorting them as we speak. Also sign up for the library's email newsletter to keep in touch with what we're doing. And please like us on Facebook to receive up-to-date information on our programs, as well as our various projects and new things coming down the pike. There's a sign-up sheet at the back as well. Now I'd like to take a moment to introduce to you our special guests. Immediately to my right, Mona Haydar is a writer, performing artist, and college student working on her master's in divinity. She set up an Ask a Muslim donut stand in Cambridge last December, which was widely covered by the press. She grew up in Flint, Michigan, and is a graduate of the University of Michigan. Then to her right, John Roberts has his PhD in English literature and is executive director of the Council on American Islamic Relations in Massachusetts. And then to the far right, my far right, your far left, Kemal Bozkurt is acting director at Lawrence Public Library. He has his master's degree in banking and insurance and is working on his master's in library science, my colleague. We thank you all for coming, and I'd like to take a moment to let you talk a little bit more about yourselves.
So it's really good to be here with you all. Thanks for having us out. I've never been this secluded in terms of geographically, but I'm really excited to be here. The drive was beautiful. My husband and I set up a stand, you know, as we mentioned, and you know, the outpouring of love was amazing, and it warmed my heart as a Muslim American. And what it did for me was shift me from a place of immediate fear and a sense of needing more safety or not knowing if I was safe, to a real sense of generosity and love and safety, especially in a place like Cambridge. But you know, I just carry that with me everywhere I go now, and I feel like when I approach people with that ethos, that I get it back a lot of the time, most of the time anyways. And when I don't, I'm happy to understand that it's not me and it's not my own work that has to be done in the world. So this book is really exciting for me. I'm a performance poet and soon to be divinity student, so I'm really happy to touch on a lot of these interesting pieces of this puzzle that is the Burgess Boys. So I'm excited to talk about it with you all.
Hi everybody, I'm John Robbins, and it's really a pleasure to be here. So the work that CARE does is basically a couple of things. We do civil rights and civil liberties work, which means that we provide Muslims with attorneys when they're faced with discrimination or harassment. That kind of puts us right in the middle of a lot of the firestorm that's going on a lot of these days, unfortunately. We also couple that, however, with education and media outreach. So that means that we try to put better narratives about Muslims in the media, and we try to educate the community about what Muslims believe, who they are, that they're your neighbors, your friends, your doctor, your pharmacist, your engineer. They built your roads, they built your schools, and that they have been a part of this country and our society for centuries now. So a lot of the work that we do is broadly defined as advocacy in that way. And so events like this really further that, because they allow an opportunity to dispel some stereotypes and to really put a human face toward this religion that can be made to seem very distant too often.
Hi everybody. Before I start to talk about myself, I have one good news, one bad news. Bad news is I am from Turkey, which means I am Turkish American. Turkish people, we talk too much. That's the bad news. But good news is I love my wife, and my wife told me, be careful, you are going very special town, don't talk too much. So I need to listen her. But still, I try to do my best to talk about myself shortly. Well, I am from the capital of the world for me, which is Istanbul. Why I am saying there is only one city in this world located in two different continents, Europe and Asia. Professor said yes. So I am from Istanbul. I came this great country because of my dear wife. We married in Istanbul, and I came here in 1998 to Lawrence, because they were living at that time in Lawrence. Next day, my dear wife told me, let's go to the library. Well, at that time, my English was 1%, all right? Wherever she was taking me, I had to go with her, right? But I asked her, why you are taking me to the library? I just came. And then she said, don't you want to read a Turkish newspaper? I said, is there a Turkish newspaper at the Lawrence Public Library? She said, no, there is an internet. I said, what is internet? I'm talking about 1998, man. Then, you know, every day I start to go there, and then they learn us. After 8 or 9 months, there was a great librarian, our colleague Sharon. She asked me, Kemal, do you want to work here? I said, me? How can I work here? I mean, after 10 months, you know, I was going to Adult Learning Center to improve my English. Became like maybe 15-20%. Now it's not 100%, you know that, 80% I speak, but that's okay. And English is my third language. So then I apply. Then they hire me with 15-20% English. They hire me. I worked very hard 15 years, and then I also served zoning board at the city of Lawrence, first Turkish and first Muslim 12 years. I proudly serve. I really like. And I elected also 3 times Democrat Party delegate. Sorry for my Republican friend here. So I just elected again. I also elected recently school committee member. First and only Turkish American entire USA. I was the only Turkish American entire USA 2015 elected. Then I resigned after 1 month. Why? Because suddenly 1.5 years ago I became assistant director. Then my great director, after 8 months we were working together, great. Suddenly she had a stroke. Then I found myself as an acting director. So working day and night, I normally doesn't go too much event, but when my colleagues invited me, when the events is related with the library, I never say no. For that reason, I am here with you, and hopefully we'll have a great night tonight. Thank you.
We actually share that a little bit because I went from shelving books to working as an admin assistant, helping the director, and then the director left to take a job. By then I had my degree, and so same thing, I stepped into the role of acting director from there. So boom, 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 and all of a sudden, here I am. So there you go. Why did you all, and anybody can pick this up, why did you feel it was important to be here today? Or did you?
Well, I didn't know very much about the book, but I did a little digging, and I found that it was super timely in terms of the conversation revolving around refugees, and with the rhetoric happening around the people we call migrants or immigrants, and I'm a big fan of poetry, and reading a lot of the poetry of a Somali woman named Warsan Shire. And she just writes this amazing, spellbinding, enchanting poetry about the ache that is the desire for home, whether it's her mother or her motherland. This woman just captures it. And so when I saw that there was an opportunity to learn a little bit more about this woman who I already idealize, I was really excited. So that's why I'm here, to kind of talk more about that love.
I believe very powerfully in fiction, in narratives and stories as a way of kind of bridging the gap between people, as a way of closing that divide that we too often have between our experiences and those of another person. And so, particularly for a time now in which we really are faced with the issue of the other with a capital O, of, okay, a person who might have different backgrounds or experiences than us, and what do we ascribe to them, what do we think about them? Fiction really offers a way of radical empathy in a very meaningful sense. And so I think works like this and discussing and analyzing them and kind of chewing over them are a way of bridging that in a very meaningful sense.
I love that you said that, because that's really, for us, or for me in particular, is why I like doing a townwide read of a novel, so that people really understand the power of where fiction and the author's imagination can take you, and so that we can talk about things that are really not about Nahant in order to talk about Nahant. I love the power of the novel for that. There was a selectman in another town in Massachusetts who couldn't understand why a library was offering so much fiction in there. Maybe you know the story. And I wish I had had that question, because I understand. And when we've had some of these book discussions over the last few weeks, people were very affected by what they were reading, and very tied, if you will, to the characters, and very vested in what they had to say. So it's a wonderful way to get to truths.
Well, I think just one thing about that, she really, Elizabeth Strout, right? She really pushes her imaginative limits, I felt like, by taking on the voice of a Somali man. You know, I felt like she just went out of her way and really pushed herself. And I so valued that from a white woman, a middle-aged woman. And to do that in general is difficult if you've ever tried to write fiction. But then to see that she pushed herself so much so that even me, as a pale-skinned Arab American, Muslim American, you know, very little connection to the Somali diaspora, felt so connected to this man, you know, and so pushing those imaginative limits, I feel like she really kind of stole my heart with this character and with all of her characters, but
she
through
kind of
fiction, right?
It's so true. She admitted in an interview that she had done a lot of research in this, but she felt that she was really stepping off the precipice, and that she was hoping that she would be true to the people that she had researched. She had gone to Bates College, so she was in Lewiston, where the events that are fictionalized actually took place. So she did spend the time to learn the community a little bit and understand. It's a very complex situation there. You have a refugee experience, people with, you know, horrendous backstories, different clans that may or may not get along with each other as well. The color barrier, the language barrier, the dress, the religion, all of those things going on at once in a very white community in Maine. So I did appreciate that she brought so much of that out in the book.
Do you want me to answer? Yeah. After the September 11, I don't know how many of you know, the Quran was the #1 book checked out from the public libraries in America. Why? Because American people wants to learn what is real Islam. As a librarian, I know I have a fact, all right? So we call Allah, you know, God mentioned in the Quran, we created you different nations to know each other. This is the biggest problem in the world. American people is smarter than many other nations, but still we have a problem. So your question is why I wanted to come here. At least whatever I know about my religion, my faith, express and give my knowledge to you. I just need to give 2 examples. In my city of Lawrence, 15 years ago, I did campaign for the candidate Michael Sullivan. He was running for mayor. Guess what? He started his campaign in our mosque, Methuen, Massachusetts. It was his first time at his life to enter the mosque, so he was entering with shoe, which says, hold on, sir. You cannot enter the mosque with shoe. This is our faith. You need to take out. In my city, in my library, my daughter is always laughing. Many ladies, they want to hug with me. I said, excuse me, ma'am, you cannot hug me. This is my religion. If you want to hug, I'll bring my wife, you can hug her. All right? Which is I take many times to her. In this country, if 2 men hug each other, people think different way. But in our religion, man has to hug man if you really love religious brotherly. So this is the Islam. Even Barack Obama, President Obama, just visited recently mosque in the Baltimore, right? Doesn't matter, he's the president, #1 powerful man in the world. He has to take his shoe when he is entering the mosque. So what I am trying to say is, if we know each other, trust me, this world will be much, much, much better. There is no question about. For that reason, I try to learn every nation's culture. How we can learn other nations' culture? First of all, if you are eligible, if you are capable, learn their language. That's the reason I try to speak 4 languages, but I am telling my kids, learn more and try to eat their food. Somali food, one of the best food after the Turkish food. So, and then, you know, I know almost every culture's food. My wife is lucky, she doesn't have to cook too much because I tasted almost every. Are you from Egypt?
No.
Lebanon?
No.
Palestine?
No.
Anyway.
My family's Syrian.
So, what I am trying to say is, dear guests, the reason I am here to share my knowledge with you and know each other better.
We have such a history of being a melting pot, and from, learning from all the cultures that have joined us over the years in the U.S., it is almost a shame to think that we would want to shut those doors now to being able to learn and to sample all the wonderful Turkish food. And, and we were talking about that earlier, that actually that was one of the ways that the Somali population in Maine has found a way to cross that barrier, was through food, because their cuisine is very appealing to the American diet, and so it was a great way. They invited people into the local community center, gave them free food, and then introduced them to some of their own songs and dances and other aspects of their culture, and it was a way to break the ice, a wonderful way to get to know about another culture. So, since you all come from very different backgrounds and yet share a respect for the Muslim faith, I wanted to ask you a little bit, explain a little to us about how you practice your faith in terms of prayer, worship service, diet, holy days, pilgrimages, and anything. What does your faith mean to you in what you practice? Also, I did want to say, if you, the audience, have questions, there are cards on your seats. Feel free to write them down. We'll collect them in a little bit, and we'll see if we can ask a few of your questions as well. Your faith.
Thank you for asking this question, Sharon. Well, first of all, I try my best to practice my religion. I try to, as a father and husband, I try to teach my family also to practice. I'm praying 5 times a day, so we have to pray no later than 8:15. And then I went Mecca for pilgrimage 2003. I never miss fasting. That's amazing. I suggest everybody, even for once in your life, one day, it's beautiful to fasting. And then I never drink alcohol. I'm extremely happy. So for going to, for example, a mandatory Friday pray, I like Massachusetts. Massachusetts is really really great state. I haven't been many other states, but I feel this is one of the best states. The reason I'm saying, whatever I am speaking, I have fact. All right? So in my library, which is I am working 17 years, by the way, most probably I am the only Muslim public library director you are facing. You are so lucky tonight. Most probably I am the only Muslim. Have you heard it? If Kair doesn't know, nobody knows. So 17 years ago when I started to work at the library, I asked my director, Friday at 1 o'clock, I have to go to mosque. Okay, where is the mosque? In Metuan, next town. So 1 hour lunch, it doesn't enough for me. Can I take another 15 minutes? You know what she told me? Take another 15 extra from me. I said, wow. Even many Muslim countries, sorry Kair, even many Muslim countries doesn't allow their government employee, okay, you can go to pray, mandatory Friday pray, but this state, to me, I don't know for other Muslim citizens, but to me, I don't have any major problem with this state, but I have a problem with the federal government. When you ask that question, I will answer.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious when you look at me, the way I express part of my practice. I cover my hair and I dress a certain way. And this is an act of devotion, an act of worship. And beyond anything else, it's a spiritual practice. that I've chosen. You know, people often ask me, you know, were you instructed to wear it or commanded even to wear it by a male figure in your family, your father or your husband? And you know, I always feel a little heartbroken over that question because it removes my own personal agency and my intelligence, my personal intelligence that I would need to be instructed from a person of a different gender than my own of how to dress, you know, or what would be the best way for me to dress. So I kind of resent that question a little bit just as a feminist. But, you know, in my own experience as a Muslim, it's not the 5 times daily prayer, the daily prayers, and it's not the pilgrimage to Mecca. It's in the minute, in the very mundane. It's in the warm handshake, and in the smile to the person who is passing me in the grocery store. My Islam is expressed in so much more than these outward practices that I have chosen to take on because they're mandated. You know, I experience my faith in a way that engenders love and compassion between me and everybody else, because at the end of the day, I only use Islam as a tool to allow me to be the best Mona I could be. It's nothing more than that. And so when it's not doing that, it's not serving its purpose, and it's not Islam. And so when you see people engaging in horrendous and terroristic ways, that's not Islam, because it's not calling them to a higher purpose in direct relationship with everyone and everything in the world. So it's kind of even moot to call them Islamic anything, because they are counter to everything that Islam is, which is an everyday mundane relationship to everything and everyone, including the earth. So for me, Islam, my practice of Islam means I compost, means I have a garden, it means I recycle, it means I'm generally an honest and friendly person, as much as I can be. So, you know, you can talk about the outward practices and the way I look, but really at the end of the day, my Islam is just about how nice I am. Yeah.
John.
No, it's okay. I don't want to try to top that. That was excellent.
Okay. Talk to me a little bit and talk to our audience a little bit, going deeper into how you practice your faith, because I know there have been questions, and I had somebody talk to me and say, well, you know, we're a Christian country, and I didn't quite have the opportunity to counter that. Talk a little bit about Muhammad, the Quran, compared to your understanding of other holy men and their religious writings. How do you feel that Islam fits into the various world faiths, world religions?
Sure. So, you know, it's obviously the question of a few PhDs, dissertations. But, you know, so you basically, trying to think, well, okay, and just for starters, you know, we are a Christian nation, but we are also a Jewish nation and a Hindu nation and a Muslim nation and a nation of people of no faith and that kind of thing. And the beautiful thing about us is that one doesn't push out the other, that the nature of the melting pot metaphor is that they can all be in together, and that one doesn't displace the other. It's not a cage match between the different religions where there can be only one victor or anything like that. We can all be in there together. And then just to kind of situate Islam a little bit more, so, you know, Muhammad and the Prophet Muhammad, and we say peace be upon him after that, is kind of a
Respect.
Yeah, I forget the correct
Respect.
term. Yeah, respective thing, but there's a certain salutation is maybe a word. And, you know, so he was in 7th century Arabian Peninsula, but the revelation that Muslims believe that he received, which is now written down and kind of compiled into what is the Quran, is basically envisioned as a version of monotheism that is within the faith tradition of Judaism and Christianity. So Islam says that, you know, it does not reject the message of Christianity, it does not reject the message of Judaism, that basically it views itself as the culmination of a revelation and a series of revelations, all of them pointing toward a few key principles, that of one God decidedly, and, you know, a categorical monotheism, that of service toward the poor and service toward others, that of devotion and worship and witness of that one God, and that of bettering humanity through its practice. Fundamentally, you know, the metaphor might be God as a teacher, and so each of these books are seen as a teaching manual in a lot of ways. That's why Islam refers to Jews and Christians as people of the book. And these are, you know, the book, but also, or a book, but also the book. And so, you know, when you kind of align it with those other religious practices and you think about the Quran and you read it, you realize that Muhammad is not actually mentioned that frequently in the Quran. The people who are mentioned very, very frequently are, first of all, Moses, who gets the most mentions, Mary, who has a chapter devoted to her, Jesus, who has, you know, many, many mentions himself, Abraham and Noah, that these other prophetic figures are really the ones who are talked about to a great deal, and that we're reminded of the lessons therein, saying, do you not remember what happened to Noah? And here is the description. Do you not remember what happened to Moses? And here's the description. Do you not remember what Ibrahim did? And so if you look into the kind of nitty-gritty details, you know, sometimes they align 100%, sometimes, you know, 95%, that kind of thing, and that's a huge field of scholarship. But really the focus is that there has been a chain of revelation, and that this is simply the newest one, which was happening in the 7th century AD, and that this is, again, taking those practices from the other faiths and really viewing itself as a continuation thereof. And so that's a very, very, very basic outline.
Yeah, which is not unlike what many religions have expressed, that there was another prophet who came forward who wanted to speak for his day and his time. And I don't think we're planning to, you know, isolate them or, mark them or make a list of who they are.
Yeah, well, that's actually a central belief in the Muslim tradition, is that we reject none of the prophets, that there isn't a single prophet that we know of or that we don't know of whom we reject. And that is to say that Buddha could have possibly been a prophet, but that it wasn't specifically mentioned in the Quran. And the Quran mentions time and time again that there are these sages and wisdom keepers and men and women of righteousness who brought this message, this continuation of the message of Krishna and the Buddha and Muhammad and all of the messengers of love and light and truth, that we're just supposed to get along. That's the central idea. I mean, it's not that complicated. And so, you know, when people have issues with the Quran, and I think that's maybe what you were referring to a little bit, it's 6 verses that come up again and again and again. And every single one of my teachers, when these verses are explained, flip these verses on their heads and say, this is actually not about an outward jihad. This is not actually about an outward kill them wherever you find them, the infidels, right? It has actually nothing to do with those ideas, and that actually it's instructing a human to look at those dark parts of ourselves, that each and every one of us has this part of us that is inciting us to selfishness, and that we're supposed to look at it and remedy it with love and not hate it, and not express that through hate for ourselves, or express it outwardly and allow it to manifest and permeate the world that we know. And so, 6 verses, and you think about things like Jihad Watch and Pamela Geller and these people who express a deep hatred towards Islam. And I think it's just a severe lack of information, and it's a severe underloving of ourselves when we say, no, this does not fit, this cannot go. I think it's just an expression of, I don't feel safe and secure enough. And I want those people to know that they should feel safe and secure enough, and that it is my job and my goal and my mission to say, not apologize for acts of terrorism because I had nothing to do with them, but to say that I hurt and I mourn and I want that same safety that everybody else does for everyone in the world. And that's ultimately my greatest hope and wish for the world.
Very much interests me that you're saying those 6 verses. We took something, a little quiz that the Washington Post had about putting the Bible and the Quran side by side and asking people if they could judge which was which. And maybe if you really know your King James Version, you could figure it out which was which. But I think it made the point that there are plenty of verses taken out of context, thinking of a different point in time, that can mean something quite different.
Yes.
But perhaps taking the time to look at it a little more deeply, a little more spiritually, and in context, you see a very different message. And certainly Judeo-Christians in this country are not running around on the basis of a few verses trying to commit terrorism all around the world. So I hope that more and more people will understand that most people practicing in Islam understand that. They read it more deeply. They understand where it comes from in context.
1.6 billion Muslims do that. And then you have a few sprinkled in with mental illness or a slew of other issues that cause them to react to the world in such a way, in violent ways, And not that it's a mental health issue all the time, but it's also an education issue. If we educated all the world in the way that we educate our own, and that we gave people the opportunities that we maybe had, what would the world look like if we wanted that for everyone? Instead of inciting wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, instead if we just sent teachers, what would the world look like today? Would we be trillions of dollars behind because of wars that we didn't even really vote for? What if we just sent librarians and teachers? What would that look like? I don't know. We've never tried it. Let's do it.
There have certainly been some very unfortunate people who committed heinous acts in the name of Christ or in the name
It was called the Crusades.
of their other religion, and we don't hold them up as pinnacles of the faith.
Yeah.
So
Sharon, I can
really appreciate
add
that.
for your question, is this country Judeo-Christian, and then about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I am proud of my ancestor Ottoman Empire. I am telling from my heart, and as I said, I always give example. When Fatih Sultan Muhammad conquered Istanbul, May 29, 1453, Friday, at 3 o'clock, and then when he entered Istanbul, at that time the name was Constantinople, right? His first action was for the Christian people, they were living there for a long time. If anybody touch you, if anybody try to stop your practice for your religion, let me know. That was his first announcement. By the way, the oldest church, as far as I know, is in Turkey. Correct me, my dear colleague, if I'm wrong. Remember what happened to Taliban when they get the power in Afghanistan. I don't know how many of you know. They demolished Buddha statues, all right? But Turkish people, I'm not nationalist, but I'm just giving the information I know. Ottoman Empire, they never and ever close any churches, any synagogues, any other religious houses. America, we are saying this is a Christian, Judeo-Christian country. Well, if I am asking some difficult questions, don't be upset. What was the Native Americans' religion? Were they Christian or were they Jew? I need to know. But this country might be, as the United States of America, might be created Judeo-Christian. But didn't those people came from Europe for religious freedom reason? You are coming there, you are coming from Poland, Belgium, to here for your religion freedom, and you want to do the same thing here? I'm sorry, it doesn't make any sense. So, for that reason, America had many sad histories in the back. But right now, having even some politicians try to bring America back, which is we don't want it, right, sir? So I feel we have still freedom here, one of the best country, because everybody still pray whatever they believe, even whatever they don't believe. Like Harvard University. I don't know, are you taking in Harvard or not? So, for your question about our Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, in the Quran, John, if you invite him just himself, he can give you a great separate section, because he has a PhD for this subject. But they both mention very well. In Quran, we believe there are 25 prophets name mentioned in Quran. We believe all of them and we love all of them. Again, in our belief, God sent total 124,000 prophets since Adam to up to Muhammad alayhi salam. Prophet Muhammad was the final prophet in our belief. It's in the Quran. So we believe all of them, we love all of them. Why God sent all of those 124,000 prophets? If you believe hereafter, then nobody will ask the question to God, oh God, why you didn't send me messenger to me? Then I would do better and I would believe you. That is the reason. So nobody has excuse in this world since Adam until doomsday, because God sent 124,000 prophets for us.
Wonderful, thank you. Recently, a presidential candidate spoke about America being founded on this Judeo-Christian tradition. And also recently, the mayor up in Lewiston had made statements which he had continued to adhere to say, we think the Somali population should assimilate. They need to look more like us, act more like us. And so maybe this is a two-part question. How do you feel about assimilation? I don't even know what that means to be an American. I'm not quite sure what that is, because there is so much diversity, and I feel like there should be. But along with that, are there traditions that you felt comfortable, for you particularly, Kemal, leaving behind or adopting in a different way for your personal expression?
I can answer. Instead of assimilation, I think correct word should be Americanized. Am I Americanized? The answer is yes. You know why? Here is my wife. Because when I was in Turkey, I was an advertisement manager at the radio station. Turkish culture, if you are a manager, you go work late because you are king. That's our culture. Middle East culture is same thing. But my wife told me, America is different. I mean, even beside her, I am facing. So, you go work early, you leave late, you go on time. If this program was in Turkey or any Islamic country, this program couldn't start yet, unfortunately. Unfortunately. This is the biggest problem for Muslim world. I am speaking from my heart, whatever I am saying so far, and whatever I'm going to say. So I Americanize. But did I live my faith? No. Did I live my culture? No. I am still every morning still eating olives, feta cheese. That's I will never, even when we travel, because there is no hotel in America, they are serving at the breakfast olive. I carry with me. Because I cannot have breakfast without olives. So it doesn't mean I am not American. I am Americanized very well, but I am carrying with my culture It is benefit for America and for me, and for that reason, I am taking my kids every summer to Turkey. I don't know if I am able to go this summer or not. Maybe I need your help to get a vacation time. I want them to learn both culture. Trust me, when you have both culture, think about like you speak two languages. You have like 2 PhDs. That's a great advantage. So answer your question, ma'am. Yes, I am Americanized, but I am Muslim American. I am Muslim, Turkish, American, Democrat, Laurentian. Yes.
There's a passage that I think is really poignant here. Could I read it?
Yes, please.
So there's a passage, it's on page 97, that I think is really poignant for this question. And would you guys mind if I read it to you and then we kind of shared our thoughts on it? So it says, a group of Somali women had entered the store. In long draping cloaks, everything covered except their faces, they momentarily seemed to Susan to be one entity, a large foreign assault presenting itself to her. A blurry arrangement of dark reds and blues and green head coverings, a splotch of lively peach color, no arms or even hands to be seen, but there were the murmurings of sounds of different voices, then the subsequent separating off of one, an elderly woman, short and lame, seating herself in the corner chair, and this clarified to Susan's eye what seemed to be the situation, which was that the youngest one, tall and bright-faced, and to Susan, surprisingly beautiful, in a way that seemed almost American, with her dark eyes and high cheekbones, was holding forth a pair of glasses, broken at the hinge, and asking in poor English to have them fixed. Beside the tall young girl stood a darker-faced woman, large and bony in her robe, her face immobile, watchful, unreadable. She was holding plastic bags through which Susan could see cleaning materials. Susan picked up the glasses. "Did you purchase these here?" directing her question to the young girl, whose beauty felt aggressive to Susan. The tall girl turned to the boxy woman. They spoke back and forth, quickly. "Hey," asked the girl, whose peach-colored headscarf seemed flamboyant, amazing. "Did you purchase these here?" Susan repeated. She knew they had not. These were drugstore glasses she held in her hand. Yeah, said the girl, and repeated her request to have them fixed. "Okay," said Susan. Her hands were not steady as she worked the tiny screw. "1 minute," she said, and took them to the back room, though it was store policy not to leave the front unattended. When she returned, the women were as she had left them. Only the young one seemed to have the energy of youth, touching the frames that were arranged in a stand by the cash register. Susan put the glasses on the counter and pushed them forward. A commotion from the boxy woman made Susan look to her, and she was amazed to see a child's foot exposed as the woman pulled her arm back to reach beneath her robe. The woman bent to put down, then pick up the bags of cleaning materials, and another bulge on the other side of her was made visible. She had been standing here with 2 children strapped to her, silent children, as silent as their mother. "Do you want to try those on?" Susan asked. The tall, young girl continued touching the frames without removing them from the stand. None of the women were looking at Susan. They were in the store, but they were far away. "These are fixed now," Susan's voice sounded too loud to her. "No charge." The young girl reached beneath her robe, and Susan, as though all her fear had waited for this moment, had the sudden thought that the girl was going to draw a gun on her. It was a small purse. "No," said Susan, shaking her head. "Free." "Okay?" the girl asked, her large eyes looking quickly over Susan's face. "Okay." Susan held up both her hands. The girl slipped the fixed glasses into her purse. Okay, thank you." There was commotion once more as they spoke in their language, hard and brisk to Susan's ear. The babies stirred beneath their mother's robe, and the old woman stood up slowly. As they moved toward the door, Susan realized that the old woman was not old. How she knew this, she couldn't have said, but the woman's face had a fatigue so deep, it seemed to have cleaned away whatever it was in a face that gave it life. Her face, as she walked slowly without a glance at Susan, had left on it only a deep and haunting apathy. From the doorway of the store, Susan watched them walk slowly through the mall. Don't make fun of them, she thought with alarm, because she saw two teenage girls stare at them as they went past. At the same time, the absolute foreignness of these draped women gave Susan an inner shuddering sigh. She wished they had never heard of Shirley Falls, and it scared her to think that they might never go away.
It's a beautiful passage.
Isn't it gorgeous? But one of the things that I think, the reason I wanted to read this particular passage, I found it so striking because I realized in reading this and in hearing words like dark, in talking about someone's skin, and then understanding that the English language could possibly be inherently racist. And that's something I think I had maybe known, but that it never struck me that deeply before. To understand that dark also denotes foreign, frightening, bad in a lot of ways. And that, to see someone's skin with this understanding and to have even her beauty be seen as aggressive, I think I was just really jarred by that and the sense of her almost Americanness because she was beautiful and the standards of beauty in this country. And it just brought up so much for me as an American woman who grew up looking at magazines of women who I would never be as beautiful as or as thin as, and just standards of beauty. And I think it brought so much emotion up for me. I was teary-eyed. And that's why I wanted to share it. And I don't know if any of you had reflections about that specific passage and about, it doesn't even refer to them as Muslims or as anything like that, but it was just so powerful. Her writing there was just so brilliant to me. She captured so much.
And something so important about the culture being tied to the language.
Yeah.
As well, and our own ways of expressing things that sometimes we don't even realize that have been ingrained in the American culture, and that they might be taken in a very different light by somebody else. Likewise, having spoken with some of the Somali people in Lewiston, Auburn, hearing from a teenage boy how he wanted to have so many American things in his life. He wanted to get a car, wanted to get a job, wanted to go to college and get his degree right after he finished high school, and all of those things. He said, but in the home, we will speak Somali. And I'd be so interested to be able to talk to that gentleman now, 10 years later, and find out how his life has turned out at this point. Did he marry a Somali woman? Are they speaking Somali in the home? And what about their children? Because it's so often that third generation that is, growing up more assimilated, if you will, and more picking and choosing how to express their own lives and what to keep, what to leave, and how they often rebel and surprise their own parents. And then in a lighter way, I had a moment where I always wished I'd had a camera, a woman in full chador walking down the street and balanced on her head in the African tradition, a sheet cake with the roses and the whole thing. And so I guess she found for a moment there, the best of something from American culture that she wanted to hang on
Sheet
to.
cake.
Sheet
Who
cake.
doesn't love sheet cake?
Who knew? If anyone has a question at this point, if you could pass them over this way, and we'll have Carolyn pick them up, and we'll take a look at them while we continue. It has been said in the press that the leaders of Islam have not spoken out against the terrorist actions of ISIS, of ISIL. And I'm definitely throwing this in the direction of John, because I know you've spoken to this before. So how would you respond when people continually say they're not speaking out against the terrorism?
Well, I mean, it's wrong factually. You know, it's just factually inaccurate for starters. I mean, there are a couple of things at play there. So the first is that overwhelmingly Muslims are doing this, both on a personal level and on an institutional level. I mean, just categorically, it is voluminous. Every major Muslim organization in the US and internationally has condemned all of these kinds of incidents in the strongest possible language, categorically, immediately after, time and time again. And you can look on any of the websites, you can look on any press releases, and everybody is doing this. I mean, it's truly, truly voluminous. Muslim scholars have been absolutely similarly voluminous in issuing condemnations and issuing scholarly condemnations as well that go beyond just saying this is wrong, but also multi-thousand-page documents detailing why exactly this is wrong from a legalistic, jurisprudential, and textual standpoint. This is, Letter to al-Baghdadi, for example, is a very famous scholarly manuscript produced in the last couple of years, really just saying, okay, you are wrong for this many reasons, basically. And this is, just a very, very clear issuance of condemnation of this. Every day, Muslims on the street, again, are issuing very, very similar kinds of statements in their schools with their friends and neighbors and colleagues, that kind of thing. When you're making these kinds of claims that the Muslim community needs to be doing this further or that they're not doing enough, this serves more as a tactic of alienation or as a tactic of accusation than anything grounded in reality at the end of the day. So for example, the Boston Herald, we critiqued them very, very strongly over the summer, and recently there was a columnist who started out by saying the Muslim community is not condemning terrorism. And so we promptly said, okay, well, here are about 300 organizations that are doing this within the United States. And so he said, well, this is, yada, yada. And so then a few months later, he issued another one. Okay, yes, they are condemning terrorism, and locally they are also condemning terrorism, but they're not coming out in the streets and condemning terror, this kind of thing, where you really are trying to get a more and more specific thing here. And what this is very reminiscent of is back in the 1960s and 1970s when African American congresspeople were being pressured by organizations like the Ku Klux Klan to condemn specifically each individual incident of gang violence or of any kind of violence by African Americans within their jurisdiction. And this was a tactic used as a way of associating them with violence repeatedly and of making it seem as though it was somehow their fault or their place that they needed to be condemning this, of saying, well, maybe there is a concern that you actually do support this, even though, again, that was not grounded in reality. And whenever I talk to the media, I always say this. They say, do you condemn acts of terrorism? And I say, of course, but the real question is, why do you think I wouldn't? Or are you really concerned that I don't? And they say, well, no, but we're just trying to sort it all out. Mm-hmm. And it's that kind of double think.
Excellent question.
Which is really a problem here. And it really shows the vacuity of a lot of our dialogue or surrounding Muslims within the society, that we can't even get past that basic point of suspicion. And until we do that, we can't have a more substantive conversation.
Well, everybody heard Taliban, right? Everybody knows Al-Qaeda. Everybody heard Boko Haram, right? And what was the other one? ISIS. Okay. I am asking questions. Please raise your hand. Is there anybody heard PKK, not KKK, PKK? You heard?
Yeah, they're an organization in Turkey considered a terrorist organization.
You must be the most intelligent person in this room. So, well, to me, the worst terrorist organization is PKK. But you see, only one person heard this organization. Gentleman answered perfectly. He looks like professor. So, what does PKK do? PKK is a terrorist organization. Killed 30,000 Turkish citizen. 2 weeks ago in Ankara, 1 month ago in Istanbul, they bombed, they killed many people. But our dear CNN, Fox, none of them, they made breaking news. But when something happened in Paris or Brussels, 24 hours breaking news. When this double standard never end, we will never solve this terrorist problem. So problem is not with the Muslims. Problem is the media. Media shows whatever they want. One more important knowledge for you. Probably this gentleman knows what happened in Brussels 2 days before that terrorist action. PKK opened tent in the Brussels. Turkish government said, how you can allow them? Is it possible ISIS will come Boston or Nahant have a tent here and propaganda? Can you imagine? But it happened Brussels, in Belgium, and it is happening for a long time. Europe doesn't understand. So that's number one. There is a clear double standard. Second example, we all know what happened, when was it, 2-3 years ago in Connecticut? What town was it? Did any single media mention that person as a terrorist? No, because he wasn't Muslim. If he was Muslim, was there another word beside terrorist? Unfortunately. So when any bad news happen, we pray entire our family. Oh God, I hope he's not a Muslim. You understand? There are two double standards. When any terrorist action happen, if the person or organization Muslims, they right away breaking news. That's number one. And then number two is, unfortunately, many European countries, they are supporting, even this news goes to the Europe, I don't care. Many European countries, they supported terrorist organizations. That's the reason this problem, unfortunately, never ends.
But I think one thing is missing from this conversation right here is that we're a capitalist nation, right, with a free market, and the things that go on the news are money-making things. And to say that the Muslim community is almost entirely peace-loving and anti-violent is not profitable, because the story, the main story, the thread that's being taken and weaved into the tapestry of all the rhetoric that exists right now is that Muslims are not that, is that Muslims are terrorists. And so it's not a profitable story. Nobody's going to buy that. So who's going to pick up that story if it doesn't sell newspapers, if it doesn't sell magazines? Nobody is. So it's a money issue at the end of the day. It's not anybody's fault. It's just a money issue, I think.
If you could tell people, in your opinion, how should we understand the motivations of the ISIS terrorists, the PKK, these various, are they as different as each group? Does it go back to what you were referring to, emotional illness? How should we understand what's going on?
I actually take that comment back, by the way. I don't think that a majority of terrorists are necessarily mentally ill, because I think that gives them an easy way out, and that mental illness is and I'm not qualified to speak about mental illness. So I just want to put that out there, that I think I want to take that back, because I'm not qualified to speak about that. And I happily admit to that.
I think it's fair to say that something mentally is not working in the way that most people work.
Yeah.
Whether we could diagnose somebody and say, aha, you are a terrorist, therefore you have this.
Yes.
Certainly that's a different problem.
Sure. And so I think mental illness for some people certainly probably does play an effect in there. when you actually, when government organizations or that kind of thing typically actually ask people why they're doing this, or you analyze the root causes, typically it ends up being geopolitical as an overwhelming root cause. That it really does, boil down to, very particular geopolitical circumstances at a certain point in history. That ideology, whether religious or otherwise, is usually used as an excuse or as a means of kind of marshaling people behind a cause. But the root causes that actually underlie this are geopolitical dissatisfaction, a history of oppression, marginalization, economic disenfranchisement, feelings of frustration or marginalization within a society or culture, lack of access to equitable resources, a feeling that one has no other ways of enacting change. These are the things that people who enact these kind of crimes give as their own motivations behind them. So as long as we continue to use the kind of easy solution of, okay, well, they are Muslims and it's grounded in the Quran, as the USA Today article said yesterday, that the Quran is the problem or that kind of thing, that as long as we keep going to this kind of easy and really facile solution, which really has very little to do with reality, we're not going to get any closer to security. Yeah. It might make some of us feel better or feel like there's a very easy solution to this, but at the end of the day, it's going to just continue taking us down the wrong pathway toward any more of a secure world for all of us. And by the way, speaking of security, I'd really like to emphasize that, despite the media portrayal of this, you are still far more likely to die as a result of your refrigerator falling on you than of an act perpetrated by a Muslim in the US. Far, far more likely statistically. And you are twice as likely to be a victim of violent crime as a result of a white nationalist. I am by far the most dangerous person on this panel based on racial and ethnic background. As a white Southerner, I never get asked to explain the KKK. I never get assumed that I have some kind of relationship with them. I never get assumed that I'm sympathetic. But as a Muslim, I am constantly pushed in that direction, constantly being asked about that.
Would you say that's the biggest misconception that people have, or is there something else that bugs the heck out of you that you think people misconstrue about people of the Muslim faith?
Well, that's a very big one. So this is the plane crash problem, right? So planes are statistically by far the safest mode of travel. Plane crashes are very vivid to portray in the news, so therefore you remember them very strongly, and a lot of people have phobias of planes and they associate them with danger, even though again they're very statistically safe. You're much more likely to get in a car crash on your way to the airport than to be involved in a plane accident, much overwhelmingly more likely. It's the same thing. We tend to have a myopic focus when it comes to Islam. We tend to forget our own culture and our own kind of texts, as you say, that have their own sort of potentially ambiguous readings as well. And we tend to remember very, very vividly those issues of the other, the outsider. So again, this is why I think it's productive to read novels like this, because they humanize those other characters, they humanize those other figures. So that for us then, when there are ambiguities both in the Bible and the Quran, we say, well, the Bible is familiar, I know it, as a culture and as an individual, so I'm less likely to be distressed by any kind of ambiguities. But when I read them elsewhere, I'm very much more likely to be. I know my own culture, and I know that, for example, groups like the KKK or other hate groups or nationalist groups that are, extreme right-wing and nationalist, don't really represent a viable part of, American culture, and they're extreme fringe. But then we're very almost glad as a culture when we see this getting held up as emblematic of everyone in Iran or of everybody in Iraq or Syria. This is a very easy stereotype to make, and we forget again that really the Syrians that we were thinking about are bakers. They're chefs, they're just random people on the street, they're children, they're engineers, they're doctors. They're actual human beings that, again, are as angry about this as Americans are. So I've talked too much, sorry.
Could we blow one more misconception out of the water about yourself as a feminist?
Absolutely. I mean, a self-proclaimed feminist in that I am a woman with ambition, and that, essentially I won't let anybody get in the way of that ambition. And tomorrow, if you pick up People magazine, we'll be in there with our signs, ask a Muslim and talk to a Muslim, and free flowers and donuts for free conversation. Because I really truly do believe that freedom and liberation as these lofty ideas begin with connection. And that for me to connect to you and you, that's the doorway to my own liberation. So let's all get free together with our relationships, through our relationships. And like Ram Dass is a huge figure for me, Gloria Steinem is a huge figure for me. So I have these like very eclectic figureheads of what it means to be a liberated woman, and some of them are men, you know, so I think it's very interesting. But, you know, my own agency as a woman cannot be dictated by anyone, because I was given the mind and consciousness by some greater being than myself to establish the me who I will be in this world.
All right. I would like to give you all the opportunity if there's anything else that you would like to say.
Yes, I didn't answer your question if I understand correctly, how we can finish this terrorist group. Let me ask question to myself. I would like to say three things. Number one is family. Unfortunately, yes, America is a great country, but there are many things I don't like it. For example, when I was going to Chicago, in the billboard at the highways, you see divorce, $75. So this country, marketing, divorcing, only $75, right? I like this town. It seems everybody's couple here. So that's good. Family, if there is no family, if kids raising with a divorced family, what do you expect from those kids?
Well, now you sound like a Republican.
So, no, I am.
I'm just teasing.
I am Democrat, still Democrat.
No, nothing.
So-
Just that's a conservative value.
So that's number one. I mean, this is not only America's problem, entire world problem. If we have a strong family, we'll save our kids and they will save their kids. That's number one. Number two, economic reason. Why there are not terrorists in this country? Everybody's economic. Or Dubai. Why? Did anybody heard any terrorist comes from Dubai? No. Everybody's rich over there. Everybody's relaxing. They don't even work. Yes, we cannot deny this reality. If there is no money, if there is no economic opportunity, what do we expect with these all young kids? They don't have family, they don't have money, they don't have job, and there are millions. That's number two. Number three, and most important, is education. But don't think me wrong, John, you deserve to be PhD. But it doesn't mean, education doesn't mean like you have double PhD from Harvard, MIT, Oxford. Even if you have 10 different PhD, but if you don't have fear of God, I'm sorry to say again, I am speaking from my heart, you are nothing. If you don't fear to God, if you have that fearness, you cannot kill anybody. In any religion, says don't kill, that's it. So if we have these three things, I think this world, this country, this state, this town will be much, much better. Thank you, şükran, teşekkür ederim, gracias.
John?
Sure, and I'll just be brief. For a long time, Muslims have been seen as a liability, or as some difficult thing that as the U.S. we kind of have to work to assimilate because we're good people, right? Okay, we're Americans; it's our duty. We just got to grin and bear it, suck it up, and we got to assimilate and integrate this group, and we have to be nice to them because it's who we are as Americans. But as long as we continue to have that attitude that Muslims are just this group that needs pity or needs assistance, it's not really going to truly benefit the Muslim community. The perception has to be, and I would argue that this is what has been successful for the Jewish community, for the African American community, for the Japanese American community, the Hispanic American community, the LGBT community, all communities before, that there is something viable that they are bringing to the culture, that the culture needs and wants to bring in and benefits from. That the U.S. will get better because of this diversity. Diversity is like Jell-O. There's always room for more, and you always want more of it at the best end of things. And so the more that we come to see Muslims not as just a pity case or something that we're obligated, a group that we're obligated to work with, but actually as some group that, yes, has viable economic things to bring, has viable ideas to bring, that has a religion that brings peace and love and has something to teach and show us, that is a culture that can benefit our own and integrate with that and assimilate or Americanize or whatever term you want to have, but become part of that big melting pot. That the more we can see this as a positive thing, the more successful this is going to be moving forward in the future.
Mona?
I think it's been said pretty well. The Muslim American community wants nothing more than to live like everybody else. Like, I'm just a grad student with a 2-year-old and a husband, and I live with my in-laws, and they're wonderful people, but at the end of the day, we're just humans trying to get by. And the broader Muslim community in the world, those 1.6 billion people who I mentioned before, they're a vast spectrum of people, and I can't speak for them. Just like a white person can't speak for all white people, because that's ridiculous, right? I find it very complicated and very, people come up to me at our booth, the Ask a Muslim booth, and they want me to condemn terrorism. And I condemn all forms of violence, no matter the perpetrator, because I am a staunch anti-violent person. And that is my belief. Be they Muslim or be they anything else, I am anti-violence. And I try to express that even through my relationship with my 2-year-old. Like, I see raising my voice to him as an act of violence. And I really try my best not to do that. Because you're laughing at me, but I do. There's something about it that it incites a kind of anger. And, if I took the wisdom and the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad seriously, I really would never raise my voice above a whisper, because that's how he spoke and lived. And if I really took that Quran seriously, well, the Quran instructs me to engage the world in a way such that I repay every act with that which is more beautiful, even a hateful act. And I'm instructed by the Quran to give my enemy a gift of love, from love. And that's actually the teaching of the Quran. So when I'm instructed to do these kinds of things, and then I see people who call themselves Muslims and they're so-called terrorists and whatever, it's mind-boggling. It's hard to understand because it's so far away from my own practice or my own belief. Yeah.
Thank you so much for all of you. And all of you for coming today. And I hope that we spent a little time learning that if you meet 3 people, you've met 3 different people. Mm-hmm. And just like the novel was about so much about the assumptions that we make, that maybe we'll be reminded to think twice when we meet another person. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank
And
you.
hey, can I just put a shout out? I'm on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, so you guys can connect with me. I'd be honored to be your friend in real life or online, whatever. So please feel free to connect with me. And if you have questions that span beyond the book, I'm not a scholar, but I'm happy to answer that which is in my scope.